In this lesson, we're going to learn how to reset our level using the killbox. Alright, so we want to create the functionality that if the player happens to fall off the track, we don't want them to fall forever in space. We want them to hit a trigger that would be down below the track, and then once that player hits that trigger, it will go ahead and reset the application. So resetting this level. So to get started with that, we first need to create our killbox object. So to do this, we'll go ahead and we'll go to create, or actually let's go to game object, create empty. Let's give it a name. Let's call this killbox. And then I'm also going to give it an icon so that way I can see it very easily. And then I'm going to go ahead and just reset its position for right now. And now we need to add a component to this. The component we want to add is going to be a physics component, because our 3D object, which is our player, is going to collide with it, and we want this to be a box collider. Let's go ahead and set this to a trigger, so that way whenever the player hits that, it just kind of falls through it, and then it'll go ahead and fire off the script that's tied to this. So with that set, let's go ahead and set up the size of our box collider. So we're going to do 500 in the X, which you can see gives us plenty of room, so this eliminates any chance of the player actually going outside of that and falling forever. And then we're also going to set the Y value to 50 to make it large enough for the player to hit. And we'll also do 50 in the Z, so that way it has some depth and we don't have any problems with the player possibly going outside of it in this direction. So let's go ahead and click on 2D again. Let's lower that kill box down to where that top line is right about at the top of those mountains. So that should give us plenty of room. Now with that set and ready to go, we need to go ahead and create the script that's going to be tied to this object. So to start that, let's go ahead and select our scripts folder inside of our project panel, and then we're going to right click, create new C# script. Let's go ahead and just call this killbox and hit enter. Double click on that and let's get started. So with this, it's going to be pretty simple to use, because all we really need is a function that is going to detect whether we touch that trigger or not. And so we're going to say void on trigger enter, and then we're looking for another object with a collider on it, and that's going to be our player. And we're just going to say collider other. Okay, other is just a generic variable that we use for this particular function. And let's open up our curly brackets and close them, and then inside of that we're going to tell it what to do. So in this case, we're going to check to see if the player object is actually colliding with this. So we're going to say if other dot game object dot tag equals, and we're going to say player, then we want it to do this. And it's very simple. All we want it to do is to go ahead and load the level again. So we're going to say application dot load level, and then we need to give it an index number. Now in your levels, depending on how you are setting it up in your project settings, you're going to have an index from 0 to however many levels you have in your game. So level, or the index 0, is the first level of your game. Seeing how we only have one level in our game, we're going to use the index of 0. You'll want to close the parentheses of that and then end with a semicolon. And that's all we have to do. Now what we'll do is we'll hit Control S to save that, and let's test it out to see if it works. So we'll go into Unity. Let's make sure that we apply that script to our object, but you'll see here that we're having a little bit of a problem. It's looking like we have a problem with this game object right here, or this line of code. It's saying other dot game object dot tag. It doesn't understand the player. Let's see. Let's do other dot tag. Let's see if that helps. Control S. Let's see. What did we do before? Let's see. Other dot game object dot tag. Oh, we forgot to do is equal to. Sorry about that. Other dot game object dot tag is equal to player. Okay, that error kind of threw me off there. It didn't really express that. So that should go away. There we go. And now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we will tie that to our game object. So let's add component scripts and we'll use killbox. And let's hit play. So let's go ahead and just take the player off of the ramp here just to test. And whenever the player hits the mountains, it should reload that level, and it does. Perfect. Okay, so now we have this set up to where the player, if they accidentally go off the level, just like I did there, it will restart the game. Now, if you wanted to, you could go ahead and make that wait a little bit, so you can create something like a timer, but we're not going to get into all of that right now. Let's go ahead and move on into our next lesson, where we're going to finish up. So whenever the player gets through the level itself and they hit the finish line, we want it to display some sort of message and give us some sort of feedback that we've won the game. And so we'll get started with that next.